wanna be all by myself anymore.
Guys, I'm by myself. I've been ditched by Prestige Reef. I've got no other guests, so it's just me. But we're going to crack on anyway. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Sunday night Reef Talk live stream. And today, this is going to be a news update, a reefing news update. Now, with the world of reefing, it's a pretty slow world in the terms of news. So there's not going to be a ton of news, but there are some pretty significant things that I wanted to go over today. So that's what we're going to discuss. There were a couple of things that I wanted to pick up in the chat. First off, though, PJ says, did I miss the 48 BRS Bonanza on metal halides? Referring to a comment earlier that's now disappeared. The blade rollout made me gag, although I want a pair of 12-inch growths to replace my reef brights in spite of that rollout. And the reason I'm talking about that first is because I'm with you. And I find sometimes when there's, and it's going to sound hypocritical, but sometimes when there's a new product released and there's just endless videos about it, it's a little bit much. And also the BRS video about it, they did 54 lights, was it 54 lights they compared? And so many of them were combinations of the blade that it was effectively one long advert for the blade. And in fact, to say one long advert, there were 3 or 4 videos that are currently hidden, but in a playlist, all talking about the blade. So I'm with you. It did make me gag a little bit. With that being said, I actually think the blade looks like a really good light. So I want to talk about it today because there are a few things that I think are worth noting as well. I've not got my hands on one, but I think it looks wicked. So I am going to talk about it a bit more. So PJ, apologies for making you gag. And what else have we got? Was there anything else I wanted to pick up on? Probably not. But of course, it is not too early for whale shark gags. Jason, good to see you along. And what else have we got? Let's have a look. Catch up. Ocean Project. Sean, how you doing? Oh, calc stirrer. Give me a shout. I've ordered a calc stirrer, guys. A Deltec one. 430 quid. Insanely expensive, but I'm really excited. I might not get a chance to set it up next week, maybe the week after, but that's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to that. Anyway, who else we got? Jay's Real Reef, fellow YouTuber. Good evening, Jay. How are you, my friend? And plenty of other people. So, right, let's get stuck in then. Loads of news stories, or well, plenty of news stories anyway. The first one, I will come on to the AI blade, which is kind of the main event of the evening. But the first thing I wanted to talk about was last week's live stream when I had Jonas Busa from ABC Reagents on. He doesn't want to talk about what the reagents are compatible for, what device, but I don't care because no one can sue me. They are for the reagents from last week. They are for the Neptune Trident, which many of you will have figured out anyway. But basically, ABC Reagents sell dirt cheap reagents for the Neptune Trident, and he reckons they are way overpriced. And actually, that was one of the things that put me off buying it in the first place. So I didn't buy one, partly because the reagents were so expensive. So if you're wondering what that was about, ABC Reagents is I do reagents currently compatible with Trident, looking at other things, and they are now available in Europe, which is very exciting. And for those of you who missed it, ABC Reagents also are looking into, I say ABC Reagents, a guy called Jonas, professional chemist, lucky to have a guy like that in the hobby actually. He's looking into making an automatic tester for the big 5, i.e. calcium, magnesium, alkalinity, nitrate and phosphate. So one machine that will do all that, probably be quite big given it will do all that, but one machine that will do all that, and his aim is to create it for less than $700. Now, I reckon that's probably optimistic, but you know what? If he's not sort of a big company that wants to make a ton of profit, he's not motivated by that, and he's an extremely bright guy. He knows his chemistry, so if anyone can do it, maybe he can do it. So watch this space. There's no prototype ready. So it's going to be a while, but one thing to test all 5 of those, $700. Yeah, I'll write him a check right now. I'm gonna have a sip of beverage. And no Prestige Reef, no. He is flying tonight. So he is back in the UK. And the good news about that is if you want to buy corals from him, I looked on his website earlier on, he is shipping from Wednesday, the 16th of January. So this Wednesday, 16th of January, that's tomorrow. This week anyway, this coming week, he'll be posting corals again. And I'm hoping he might be back next week. And I've got a few ideas of live streams I want to do with him that will get him excited, which is why I'm sneaking in an equipment chat today, because I know he doesn't like equipment. So Ryan, I'm looking after you, mate. All right. So that was those two things. Oh, the other thing with this smart tester, the tester that Jonas ABC Reagents wants to make, the only thing closest to that, or the closest two things to that at the moment, are the ReefBot and the Mastertronic, which are about double the price of what he's aiming for. But there is also a Refactory smart tester coming at some point, but it keeps getting pushed back and back and back. So I don't know when that's coming. Supposedly soon, maybe this quarter, I don't know. But that'll be exciting as well. And also the other news from Refactory, you might have seen on Parker's Reef did a video about the Refactory smart roller. Refactory smart roller, which I'm going to bring up and show you. It's another what's it called? Automatic filter roller. And this is the first product release of the year, I think. Pretty much first. Might have even come out at the end of December, but I think it's now in the shops. Well, I know it's now in the shops in the UK because I know it is. But let me show you this. Share screen. Oh, that's weird. Why isn't it just doing that? Here we go. Right, share that. So bring that up. This is it. It's another. So there's a few of these on the market already. It's not mega exciting because there's a few of them knocking around already. And I think the USP of this, one, it's got the Refactory app, and so it does the same sorts of things as the Red Sea one does. It tells you when it's running out, tells you when you need to order a replacement, all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty similar to that. But the other thing that is good about this is it's got a smaller footprint. It's quite narrow, whereas most of them are quite big. And that means, and because it's narrow, wide and long, it means the roller, it's like the size of a kitchen towel. The filter roll is massive. So it looks like it might either pull out a ton of crud or last for ages. The only thing with this, though, I think this was on Parker's Reef. He said that it's designed not to reduce nitrate and phosphate, not to have an impact on nitrate and phosphate, which to me, I find that a bit weird because that's half the reason I buy a filter roller. I want the water clarity, but I also want it to be pulling out crud before it decays. So I don't know if that's correct, but I thought if that is right and they've designed the fleece roll for that purpose, that's a bit odd. But then maybe it's another reason to buy it. If you don't want to reduce your nitrates, but you want clear water, go for that. I don't know. Anyway, they are in the UK £330. Don't know how much they are in the States. So it's comparable with all of the other players on the market. And one question about, what was this? Marinescu Adrian. Alex, what is your experience with the Red Sea Reef Map 500? I used the first two rolls in just 2 weeks. A couple of things you might be able to do to fix that. Oh, I just remembered. Remember questions. I'll come on to that in a sec. So a couple of things you might need to do. I have two of them. One I was given for free, one I bought secondhand. And I found if you have yours hanging on the sump, then it's quite high out of the water level. But if you have it on the feet, it sits deeper in the water, lower down. And I had mine on the feet in my main tank for ages. And it was going through a roll every 28 days, got down to about 22 days at the worst, 24, something like that. But then I found when I raised it up higher, so it was at the height it would be when it hangs on the sump, it added 50, it lasts 50% longer, something like that. A long time, 38 days, something like that, a long time. So you might want to raise it. Because the things that affect it are the amount of crud that goes through it, so the amount you're feeding, water height, and the amount of water that you're pushing through it. So if your return pumps are quite high, that might help it as well. But I love the Reef Mat. I think it's a fantastic piece of kit. I don't know if that helps, but I hope it does. Looks smaller than the Red Sea Reef Mat in terms of the smart roller. I don't think it's smaller, it's narrower. It looks quite wide to me, and the motor sticks out the side. So I think it's probably a smaller square inch footprint, but it's still not small. None of these devices are small. The Clarity is pretty compact, to be fair, the 3000. But yeah, there we go. What else have we got? Oh, James has bought a Clarity. It's only been on for a couple of days. Easily the best reefing purchase in the world. So I had a Clarity Gen 2, and I found the diffuser that the water goes in and then comes out of. There's little slats in there. Got clogged all the time. And it was if I had baby snails spawning or if I had bubble algae or whatever, it would clog and then it was useless. And so I had to clean it probably every couple of months, not the end of the world, but pain in the backside. But on the Gen 3, I believe they upgraded that, and they made the spacing in between the teeth, or whatever you call it, wider, so it shouldn't get clogged so much. And I've not seen any reports about all of these, to be fair, but yeah, there we go. What else have we got going on? Oh, have you heard of a skimmer called Reef Glass? You only need an air pump to run it. I haven't, but I'm going to look it up. It doesn't sound like my cup of tea, to be honest. Let's have a look. 250 quid? No. Is that right? No, I think that might be something different. No, that's something different. It looks like there's a nano skimmer. Let me share the screen so you can join in the fun. I mean, that's tiny. Look at that. It's up to 30 gallons. I suspect 30 gallons is optimistic for a skimmer that size. That's quite cool, actually. I take it back. I quite like that. And that actually looks, it's got a bit of foam there. Tiny amount of foam. Where does it? I can't see where the foam is gathered. Is this a bit at the top? That's the skimmer cup? I don't know. Oh, is that the skimmer cup? No, that's the air stone, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. I think it looks quite cool. And if you want a skimmer for a small tank like that, for example, for the Fluval Evo, maybe that's a good option. I don't know. But I don't, for this tank, there is an option. There's a official Fluval skimmer, probably other skimmers you could get for it as well. I don't want it. I don't want a skimmer for a tank that small. And the filter sponge, hang on. This thing, I just change, it sits. I've just realised the microphone's been miles away from me. That's better. So the filter sponge sits there. I just pull it out every, I don't know, twice a week maybe. And it's covered in crud. It's really effective. I really like that. And water changes do a job. I don't think you need a skimmer for a tank like that. And they tend to be quite noisy. And I really don't want that tank to be noisy. So personally, I don't think I'd be bothered about that tiny skimmer. But I guess it's a good option if you really do want the skimmer. Vincent Field. He's just setting up a new tank, and I don't know whether to go with Red Sea Mat or Clarity. I much prefer the Red Sea Reef Mat. I've had both. Well, I had the Gen 2, which is the previous generation Clarity. I didn't get on with it. Every time the alarm went off, every time it clogged, it would have an alarm that would go off. You can't turn that alarm off, and it would go off at 3 a.m, which drove me crazy, and my missus, of course. So I didn't ever get on with the Clarity. But I think you probably won't have the same issues with the current generation, the Gen 3, or if you just maintain the Gen 2 a bit more regularly. The Reef Mat is, by any measure, the Reef Mat is the best filter roller out there at the moment. And it's actually quite competitively priced. So if you've got the space, go for the Reef Mat. The Clarity SK3000 is quite small. And that, in my opinion, is the only reason to buy the what's it called? By the Clarity. Otherwise, the Reef Mat is just wicked. It's really good. And I've had 3 filter rollers. The 2 I was given one of the 2 Reef Mats, but I bought an X filter, which was fine, and I bought the Clarity, which I didn't really get on with. And the Red Sea Reef Mat for me is just I love it. I think that's one of the best pieces of equipment I've added to my tank for a little while. Good question, Hurrens Reef. Do you still? And we'll come back onto more reefing news, but there's some good questions going on here. Do I still use a Reef Factory pH meter? Yes, I do. So this, again, I was given the first one for free ages ago, and I bought a second one for my second tank. But they were absolutely fine for ages. No problems with them whatsoever. Pretty reliable. Didn't really change much when you calibrate them. Didn't need to calibrate them that often. And the app is really good. The one thing with actually, do you know what? I say the app is really good. The app is generally excellent, but this is the one area, I think, the pH meter, I think the app isn't that fantastic. Well, it's not. That's a little bit unfair. Let me explain. Let me pull this up. So what you want to do when you're looking at your pH history is, this is the graph, okay? First off, I'll come on to that reading 8.91 in a minute. My pH is not 8.91. But really what you want to do is, if you look at a graph like this, you want to see what all these dots represent. Because on the left, you can see that's about 9 and that's about 8.4. But what you want to be able to do is roll your mouse all the way across. And if you're on the Neptune one, you do this and it pulls up the number. But you can see here, I'm rolling the mouse across, nothing. You have to roll your mouse across the dot to get it. And that's like to it's just a pain. And then you got to go back up and you miss them, and then they're hiding behind them. It's just a bit clunky, and I think they need to fix that. But I think they're working on something. Might be wrong, but I think they are. So first off, the app is, I mean, I'm nitpicking with the graph because it's still good and it still gives you the curve, which is all you really need. So that's fine. But my issue is 8.91. Have I turned? Let me have a look and see if I've turned off my pH meter on. I have. I've turned it off on my other tank. This is my main tank. 8.91 is the pH. My pH is 8.91. And what's the peak? Yesterday, 8.99. There's no way on God's green earth that my pH is 9. And actually on this, I bet if I round back, it got up to like 9.2. So I calibrated it a couple of times, and it calibrated correctly, all checked in, and then straight back up, went up to 8.9, 9.1, 9.2, that sort of level. And to be sure, I thought, well, do you know what? I'm dosing Kalkwasser, so maybe my pH is going crazy. It's not impossible, pretty unlikely, but let's have a look. So I took a sample from that tank, and in that tank, I'm not dosing anything. I'm not dosing. So on my main tank, I'm dosing ATI Essentials Plus, which also boosts your pH quite a lot, actually. On this, I'm not dosing anything at all. No Kalkwasser, no ATI Essentials, nothing that would boost the pH. It's in my home office, which is a CO2 filled room. And I suspect the pH is probably around the 8 mark. It's, it won't be any higher than that. 8.3 would be the absolute max it could get, because there's not even that much and many corals in there to breathe in the CO2. And it was reading 8.7. So there's something wrong with it. I've no doubt about that. And I changed the pH probe a couple of months before I did this test. I bought a new one. So there's something wrong with it. And actually, this is the same on both of mine. So I need to get that fixed. I just haven't got around to messaging the Refactory support channel. They're really good, so they'll help me fix it, I'm sure. But I'm not finding it to be reliable. For the first, I don't know, year or so, it was absolutely fine. But something's up. Unless I've figured out how to increase your pH by like 1,000 times. So there is my answer. And aside from that, the app is fantastic. It's so good. And every time I use a new piece of equipment, so I set up the AI light, and that meant I have to use the Mobius app, and I've just bought a Nero 3 pump. I've got to use the Mobius app, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just compared to the Refactory app, Refactory app is class leading. It's so easy, and puts all the information out there nice and easily. It's wicked. The app is fantastic. Okay, 3 months, one roll with the Clarity SK5000. I found my Clarity almost stopped turning, but that was because it kept clogging up. But yes, the Red Sea Reef mat I've installed on the same tank that I was running the Clarity uses, I think it's probably, my roll's going to last 6 months, maybe not 6 months, to be fair. I've only got 3 very small fish, and I feed less than a cube of frozen a day. There we go. Right, yeah, there we go. I fixed the mic. Schoolboy error. It's because Ryan's not here. I know he talked to Ryan beforehand, so I'm blaming him. And he's not here to defend himself. So, what else have we got? Let me see if I can catch up with the chat. Where's your co-host? Flying back to the UK, so he might be back here next week. There we go. Right, we're caught up. Excellent. So, in that case, we've done ABC reagents. We've done Refactory Smart Roller, new product release, and now, before we go on, there's a couple of other things actually. First off, anyone else remember BRS TV promising 52 weeks of reefing part 2? I'm sure, well, I know they did a few months before Christmas. They did, they mentioned that 52 weeks of reefing part 2 was coming. And I can't tell you how excited I am about that. 52 weeks of reefing I was about a year into the hobby when that was out, maybe even less than that. And I watched it on the train on the way back from work every day. I look forward to it every week. So I can't wait for that. But no sign of it yet. And we're 3 weeks into January, 2 weeks into January. So I'm hoping we'll have 52 weeks of reefing starting soon. They didn't ever say when they were going to start it. Obviously, it makes sense to start it from January, but it probably takes a lot of time to put together. So I'm hoping 52 weeks of reefing part 2 is coming back, because that would be very exciting indeed for me. I was looking for 52 weeks last week. Yeah, I only saw Ryan's Machna. Oh, that was episode 1, was it? Interesting. But there we go. Let me have a look. Oh, I actually want it. We're strongly considering the refractory pH meter. I need it to last more than a year. I'm not saying, and that's so the probe was fine. The probe in my original KH keeper, the stock one, not the plus, with a looks like an inferior pH probe. I've had that for 2 years, not touched the pH probe apart from to calibrate it. It still works. It doesn't need replacing. And I think actually that this is what's going on. I think this is just an issue. So I think it needs resetting or something. So I don't think it's that the probe doesn't last that long. And in fact, the probe I bought a couple of months before these problems started happening was a Warburton, no, what's it called? Atlas Scientific pH probe. So it's not even a refractory probe. So I don't think it's the probe. I think it's just an issue with mine. But there we go. Those advanced infomercials take a while to make. Oh, Rob, you're so cynical. But yeah, and actually, to be fair, it would have taken a long time to test all those lines. But right, we've caught up. Oh, hang on a second. BRS baiting. BRS should pull down all their clearly wrong info. Elevated calcium levels, grow corals faster and over that. I've not seen that. But to be honest, they've got thousands of videos going through each of them. And if you were to, every time something changes and you're not 100% sure it's right, if you were to change it, I'm not sure about that. Anyway, right. 52 weeks of reefing with a bit of luck will be coming soon, but haven't seen it as yet. The one thing I have seen on Bulk Reef Supply, though, so you will have seen the video about, or well, you might have seen the video about what's it called? The blade, the AI blade. And in that they talked about, I think it was what was it? It was I think it was shading or something like that. Dollars per par or something like that. But actually they have a whole playlist that you can watch now. None of the videos are released. Oh, in fact, some of them might be, but they're all in a playlist. So go and find the BRS playlist, and you can see all of their videos. And that's tided me over while I wait for 52 weeks of reefing, take 2. So there we go. That's that. Next piece of news that I saw, and this was good news. Good news, yes. Don't we love good news? And let me pull up Reef Builders. And here we go. So you may remember that a few weeks ago, there was this enormous cylindrical aquarium in Berlin that basically exploded, like cracked, and the water went gushing everywhere. And there were 1,500 saltwater fish in there. And the good news is that 200 of them were saved. So 1,500 saltwater fish. Middle of it was, I think, 4 o'clock in the morning, it exploded. Tens of thousands of gallons of salt water all over the place in this hotel. And my first thought would have been, well, first off, to make sure I don't get hurt. But I would have been, and I'm sure you guys are the same, thinking, how can I save as many fish as I can do? And I wouldn't have thought that would be the priority for these people. But I was, because of just, it was in a hotel. So it was just hotel workers that would have been there in the middle of the night. And yet 200 fish were saved, which I think is fantastic. I was really pleased to see that. And so they managed to rescue 200. It might be that there was just the 200 that were at the very bottom of the tank. But I've got a picture in my head of someone going around the floor, picking them up and putting them back in the main tank. But really nice to see some fish saved, because the first thing I thought when I saw that, apart from making sure people are okay, was that's a lot of fish to die. That's a real shame. But there we go. Some good news from the world of reefing. And now we are caught up. Bloody hell! I rattled through that 25 minutes, and we've done all of the subtopics, and now we're ready for the headline. So before we get to headline, is the AI blade, of course, which is what I want to talk about. But I'll just make sure I'm catching up with the chat as well. Oh, it was next to the sea life. Oh, interesting. That's cool. I didn't realize that. Brilliant. Yeah, that's. But how would you? Because it was 4 a.m, so I'm guessing the Sea Life Centre wasn't open. I don't know. Whatever happened, it was cool. So I was pleased to see fish surviving. It was next to. Oh, someone's just deleted a comment. It popped up and it's disappeared, so I can't see what you were saying. But anywho, right. So the first thing, the main event of the evening, then, is. Oh, hang on a second. let's not get carried away now. I get your excitement for 52 weeks of reefing, but I always feel like BRS is selling an agenda. The info is very good, but biased towards what they want to sell. I feel the best series was the one Ryan did. Yes, I think yes and no. So they're a company that is intent on selling stuff. So, like, for example, the comparison video they did the other day with all the lights, that looked quite heavily biased towards the AI blade to me. And given that it was part of the release, that felt a little bit like we were being sold to. But at the same time, it looked that you and I'm not suggesting that they're cheating the data. I don't think anyone is, but the data looked pretty good for that light, to be fair. So I think with any BRS video, any YouTube video, including my own, you should always take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt when they're talking about equipment. Because even if I'm reviewing a product that I haven't been given, I bought myself, you're entitled to think, yeah, but is he just trying to kiss up to manufacturers? I'm not. But that's the way you should approach things, and especially with BRS, because they are trying to sell you stuff. But the data, I think, is really useful, and I think you can. I pay attention to what BRS say, and I think they're fantastic for the hobby. But it was a bit AI blade heavy. But then I'm going to go and talk about AI blades in a sec. So, good question. Arthur Bell, was there ever an update on that Vibrant scandal? It's been about a year now, right? There was. So if you go on Reef to Reef, you can see the full details, and I'll tread a little bit carefully because I don't know the exact details, but they've said that they still want to release their side of the story at some point. They're in contact with Randy Holmes Farley, or I say they're in contact. They've sent him they've exchanged a few messages to those guys. So they did say that they want to release their side of the story. I saw on Reef to Reef, and I can't confirm if this is true or not. So check this yourself and take it with a pinch of salt. It might not be right, but I saw that they had to be listed on their website, or they had to be listed on the Minnesota Department for Environment or something as a seller of algicides or something like that. There was some change that they had to make that suggested that this study from Reef to Reef that suggested it was an algicide, is correct. And so my impression was that it's all going on in the background still, and it might come up again at some point, but I don't know. It looks like there wasn't nothing to this. It was legit. It was a real, genuine. I don't know what's the best way of putting it. The concerns that people raised were genuine. And I still think that's a big deal. You can't sell a product as bacteria when it's actually an algicide. I think that's poor form. Well, I think it's not a controversial thing to say, but anyway. What's your alk level? Couldn't tell you. 7, 7.5, 8, something like that. I think it's about that. I don't really care what my alk level is. It fluctuates a little bit over the months. If it goes up to about 9, I'll reduce my dosing. If it goes down to about 7, I'll increase my dosing slightly, but I don't really care. If I had to say what it is generally on average, it's probably around the 7.5, 8 mark. But I'm not too fussed about it being nailed on all the time. What's your opinion on running a protein skimmer, only at night to increase phosphates and nitrate? Oh, I see. So as in turn it off during the day and it won't pull out so many nutrients. I don't like that idea, to be honest. I run a skimmer 24/7 all the time. If you want it, if you're excuse me, if your nitrate and phosphates are too low, there are better ways of dealing with that than turning your skimmer off. And I would personally feed more or buy more fish. Worst case scenario, dose nitrate. So I don't like the idea of turning the skimmer off, but it's an option. I've seen BRS tell people not to buy certain products they are selling, but and that's the thing. I genuinely don't think, and some people do get a bit. They don't like BRS or hold them to a higher standard or whatever, but they do highlight stuff that is bad that they do sell. Anyway, and Ryan and Randy, do you know what Randy is? I didn't know what I'd got until he was gone. And then it was like, oh, God, I miss him. But I suspect he's probably having a better time with his guns, isn't he? Anyway, let's have a look. Call the word is allegedly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't sue me. But I don't. No one's going to sue me, really. Come on, that would be a bad move, I would think. And I've not said anything anyway. So, All right. So, hang on a second. One more. Varshall MVH pairs. Do you remember how the Bubble Magus Curve 5 performed on your old Aqua 1 mini reef? I didn't have one. I had one on the tank that I set up on my how to set up a saltwater aquarium video. By the way, shout out to BRS. There is a lot of love for you guys as well. But yeah, so I had it on the tank that I just made. I made a video. So the tank was only set up for a few days, and then I got rid of it. Bubble Magus skimmers are fine. There's nothing wrong with them. They're totally acceptable. I did have one in the past, Curve 3 maybe, for I don't know, a year or so. They're fine and they do a job, but they buzz, and they sometimes over skim. I found they're a little bit fiddly sometimes, so they're fine. And if that's your budget, then there's nothing wrong with them. But if you can stretch, you do get more for your money with other equipment. There are some things like Jecod pumps. They're fantastic, and there's not much reason to go up to an MP40 apart from things like you can pop the wet sides out and replace them. And so generally, I would recommend them as almost as good as the premium brands. But with the Bubble Magus skimmers, personally, I think you do get a lot more for your money with a better brand. So they are less. Excuse me, they're less good as budget equipment, but they are fine. Anyway, they'd sue you for your reflights. Yeah, this is true. Bloody hell, God, that'd be a big old lawsuit, wouldn't it? Why did he leave BRS? He left BRS because he wanted to, there was a gun, it was a tactical something or other, and I think he was in the army before. Maybe he knew a lot about this particular gun, and he went to work for a company that sells this particular gun, and he was setting up their YouTube channel, which I thought was really cool. Really passionate about it. So it's kind of, and he's got he would have done a really good job of them. I've not followed the channel, but he would have done a really good job for them. Any plans to get Moki on? That is, I think it's MOKYI. Anyway, no plans to get him on. No, I do like the idea of doing a threesome with Ryan, if that's not too wrong. And Ryan, I think he's either met him or he knows him. So maybe, yeah, I'd be up for it. But I can't be asked to get guests on for the most part. It takes quite a lot of arranging, and Moki as well is currently he's quite busy, and he's reduced his YouTube schedule to accommodate the fact that he's got another kid. So don't know if he'd be up for it, but I'd definitely be up for it. It'd be cool. What's your opinion on the Philips Coral Care Gen 2 lights? Still quite ugly, less ugly than the first one, and that is almost reason enough not to buy them. I think for most people, I don't like the look of them. I wouldn't like the look of them over my tank, although they're not too bad. The first one was proper ugly. It was like a roof, wasn't it? It was huge, and the second one is okay, but it's kind of, it's heavy and it looks heavy, if you see what I mean. So I don't like the way it looks, and also it doesn't have, there's no shimmer. And as far as I'm concerned, if there's no shimmer, I'm not interested, because the way it makes the tank look is just as important for me as as how good it is for your corals. However, and I've never had one of these, but from what I understand from Chris Meckley at ACI Aquaculture, they're wicked for growing corals. So if you don't care about shimmer and you don't care about the way your tank looks, then great, they get on. They're great. But the fact that they haven't really taken off probably tells you, I don't know, all that really tells you is that they're a bit ugly, to be honest, and that Philips aren't very good at marketing. I think they were mainly aimed at, what's it called? Public aquariums, funnily enough. So they've not really pushed it into the hobby. But anyway, they're just not my cup of tea because they haven't got shimmer. And that was, here we go. We've got the gun. Where is it? AR-15. I don't know what an AR-15 is, but yeah, there we go. Alex, do you add bacteria to your otter tank? No, don't see the point. There's Reef Bum does it, I think, or he's experimented with it, but it's for a start, all these bottles of bacteria, most of them, the startup ones, nitrosoma, is it, whatever it's called, can't remember what they're called, the startup bacteria colonies, they tell you what's in it, but most of the others don't, because it's a proprietary recipe, I guess. So I don't know what I'm adding and why am I adding it, because isn't your it's once you've added it, you're not gonna, if it's dying off, then there's probably a reason, and if it's I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me. That doesn't. Reef Bum's a bloody experienced guy, much more experienced than I am. His tank's amazing as well. Tanks are amazing, but I just don't get it. I don't see the point. If someone comes along and shows me this is, and there's this, what's it called, the aquabiomics, they do bacteria ICP tests now, don't they? So if in 6 months, a year's time, they can show me, look at the benefits of adding bacteria to an established tank, this is what it does to your bacteria population. And by the way, not just that, that's all well and good, but also look at this tank that I ran with with no bacteria, and then look at it 6 months later after, well, I didn't make any other changes, I started adding bacteria, and look how much better my corals are. Then fair enough, but it's not my cup of tea. Anyway, hang on a second, more BRS. BRS seems to be a controversial subject. I feel bad for them. To see BRS shields go after people who would call out BRS that deliberately use bad data on the GHL to contrast the blade. Bad data on the GHL. I saw something from Telegram about that. I didn't understand it, to be honest. I didn't look at it long enough, but yeah. Anyway, what else have we got? So yeah. You can buy pool algicide in massive jugs for next to nothing. So Vibrant were being dodgy on multiple levels. Yeah, and given that it was, I think it was chemically more or less the same constitution as API Algae Fix, which was like a quarter of the price. That's just, even if let's just put the fraud to the side for a moment, and let's say we forget about whether or not they were misleading, selling the exact same product, and they might not have known what it was, but selling the exact same product for like 4 times the price and putting a different badge on it, that's taking the piss. that's pulling the wool over people's eyes. So didn't like that. No, I don't agree at all, in fact. So you know what, let's get stuck in with the chat on this, because I'm already bloody hell, I'm way behind on the chat. so we'll get stuck into the AI blades then. So for those of you who don't know, the 2 people who haven't seen the 35 videos already on the AI blade, Aqua Illumination, makers of the Prime and various other lights, have brought out a strip light called the AI blade. There are 4 versions, 3 of which we're interested in. There's a freshwater one, don't care. There's a refugium one, which I think looks quite cool. And then there is a glow and a grow. Bad names, in my opinion, because if glow and grow sound too similar, doesn't really matter. But the grow is the whiter spectrum. So let me have a look. Did I make notes of what lights it's got? No, I didn't. That's shocking. But it is the whiter spectrum. So it's got more white lights and fewer blue lights. In fact, here we go. So the grow spectrum will just look like a whitish light, kind of like that, I guess, that kind of white, probably not quite as blue as that. And it has cool white, royal blue, and blue LEDs, whereas the blade glow is for fluorescence, basically, and this is just like blue. So this one has no white lights whatsoever. And the blue lights it doesn't have, or it doesn't say what the spectrum is on that. And so it's basically all royal blue, 12 royal blue, and then this confusing mix of others. It says it's got 6 430 nanometer UV. That's not UV. 3 LEDs that are 450 nanometers UV, also not UV. And then 3 that are 405 nanometers UV, also not UV. UV is 400 or below. And there's sometimes say 405. Sometimes people say that's near UV, as in it's almost UV. Near UV is a type of UV. It doesn't mean almost UV. So I don't get why they do that. Why do they say that these bulbs are UV when they're not? I don't get it. And because is anyone looking at a bulb, looking to buy a bulb, going, I must have X number of UV bulbs? I don't care about UV. So I don't get why they do that. I don't get why they don't just say it's blue, like call it different kinds of blue or whatever. I don't understand. If I go looking for a light, I'm not thinking I must have UV light in this. It's weird, and it's not UV. Anyway, I digress. So they're the 2 that we're interested in, really. There's a freshwater one as well, and the refugium one, which I'll come on to. Now, I think there are a couple of things here. The grow, basically, by the way, so the white one is the same, more or less, with slightly different ratios of numbers of LEDs, the same color LEDs as the AI Prime Sol. So this is the AI Prime HD, AI Prime 16 HD, and the AI Prime 16 Sol, SOL, has similar spectrum to this, but I think it has fewer white lights, and it doesn't have any red, and it doesn't have any green. So that's the same as this. And if you've ever seen an AI Sol in the flesh, it looks wicked. It looks really, the blue spectrum anyway I've seen, and it looks really nice. So the Grow is the same spectrum as that. And the thing that differs with this, I think it's a bit of a shame. So the two options, the Grow and the Glow, there are a couple of things that I think they've missed out on. For a start, there's some wicked things about this, and I'll come on to that in a minute. But for a start, you've got to choose, if you're going to have more than one of these over your tank, you've got to choose what ratio you have them in. So do I have, obviously you want a Glow for the blues in the evening, but also you want a Grow for the whites during the day. So if I was to buy 3, I'd be thinking, well, do I want 3 with a mix of 1 Glow? Let's go white and blue, shall we? 1 white and 2 blue, or the other way around. So I think it's a slight shame that there's not a third option that's a full spectrum light, either that combines the same number of LEDs as that. It would be more expensive because there's a lot more in it, or maybe even, when I say full spectrum as well, neither of these are full spectrum. So they don't have red or green, which even the white one doesn't have red or green, which is in a way a shame, because it would be good to have one light that is a full spectrum, so you can just say, you know what, I'm going to get that one. It does everything, because you can set it, from what I can see, just to go blues in the evening. So if it was a full spectrum with red and green as well, that would be wicked, and that would be the one that you could get to, the one light to rule them all. But does anyone really care about red and green? I don't run any red or green on that light. I've got my water box next to me. I turned the green on today for no real good reason, but I've never run green before. And on my main tank, on my Kessels, I don't run red or green either. So it probably doesn't really matter. I just think it would have been nice if there was one full spectrum one. The other thing with this, and actually, do you know what? Let's get some optics up on the screen so I can share what this looks like. So this is the AI blade, of course. And what was I going to say? So it comes in various different sizes, right? 12 inches, 21 inches, confusing sizes, 21 inches, 30 inches, 39 inches, 40 inches, all the way up to 66 inches, okay, which is big. And basically, each 1 foot strip of light is 20 watts. So you add on however many, and you get to the full size. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 1 to 7 foot, basically, and 20 watts to 140 watts. The 20 watt one, this is one thing that I've not seen anyone talking about. I think, and this is the Glow. So actually, let's look at the Grow. The 20 watt one, that is, I think it was about, in the UK, it's about 150 quid, which probably means in the States it's around $150, $140, something like that, for a 20 watt, 12 inch light. That for me is absolutely fantastic, because if I were to start again with this tank, that light there, the AI Prime 16 HD, cost me 225 quid. Whereas the blade it's half the power, but it's almost half the money. So, well, not almost half the money, 75 quid less, a lot cheaper. And for me, that would be perfect for something like a Fluval Evo. I think that would be an awesome light. For a start, it would spread the light a bit better, because you've not got one puck, you've got several pucks. It's also much cheaper. And although that's 45 watts, I think, and this is 20 watts, so you are losing quite a lot of power. You don't need it. I only run that light at, I think, 50%, and I've checked the PAR, and it's fantastic. For LPS, it is spot on. So you don't need 45 watts for a tank like that. So for me, the small one is a really good option for nano tanks. It's the cheapest of the good brands, the premium brands. There is a Kessel A80, I think. Do they still make that? But that's 11 watts, which is just not enough. And Kessel power, for me, I've always find that you don't get much. You don't get much par for your watt. So I don't. But so for me, that for a small tank, I think is a wicked option. And let's get rid of that. So there we go. So that was the first thing I wanted to talk about with that. So the 20 watt looks wicked. I think that's really good. And also, if you've got like a 2 foot cube, something like a Red Sea Reefer 170, that kind of tank, having either side flanking your main light, or even just 2 just of the of those lights, maybe 3 if you're pushing it, would be really good. And because they're longer and thinner, and they've got LEDs spread out across the whole length of it, the spread is going to be much better. And that seems to be borne out by the tests that BRS have done. And say what you like, I believe those tests, and they're not going to be putting out false information on that. So there we go. I thought that was really good, and I think they look. The annoying thing is, and by the way, I should have said the first thing I should have said. We're talking about lights. Hang on. First thing I should have said is I do not want to change my lights on my main tank. I've said this 1,000 times before, and I change them all the time. Far too much, but I don't want them. The annoying thing is when I got the Reef Brights are fantastic. I really like them. They give really nice coral fluorescence, but it's a bit more of a, and the LEDs, I'm pretty sure they were sold as or labeled as royal blue, but it's not. To me, royal blue is that really deep fluorescent blue, whereas this is a slightly lighter blue, almost like a kind of, it's not Windex, but it's towards the Windex scale. It's not the really deep blue. So actually, I didn't get what I was thinking I was going to get when I got the Reef Brights. And actually, what I had in mind was exactly what these offer, because the blue spectrum on the AI Hydra is pucker. It looks awesome. So that's what I wanted. However, so actually, technically, the AI blade is what I want for my tank, but I'm not changing my lights again. It's not happening. And I don't want to do that, so I'm sticking with it. But I would consider it for my other tanks. So for that, for example, there are a couple of spots that get quite shaded, and I wonder if they would get less shaded with the AI blade, because it seems to spread light over a more even, what's it called? More evenly. Let's catch up with the chat, actually, because there are a couple of things I saw. Jim Graham's in the house. Jim, how you doing? Sean had something to say. Companies need to make a pure blue LED, more eye-watering fluorescence. You said something about what's it called? Royal blue earlier. I think I can't find it. I appear to have missed it, but I think you don't like royal blue. Is that right? But I love royal blue. Yeah, and that's basically what the Reef Bright is. It's a lighter, to my eye anyway, it's a lighter color. It's not the proper deep pure blue, but that pure blue effectively more or less is what the coral glow is. It's not quite, because it's not all 450 nanometers, but let me have a look and see what it was. So it was, I think, 12 royal blue. I think that's 450 nanometers. Royal blue is the proper deep fluorescent. So 12 of them are royal blue, which is half, and then there's another 12 that are UV. So half of them are royal blue, and that's not bad. But I guess Sean wants, I think what you're saying, Sean, is that you want 100% royal blue, and I'm not necessarily against that. 799. So this is the thing. Price. Good point, Chris Durham. So price on these, in some ways they're quite cheap, in other ways they're quite expensive. If you work out watt for watt, so if you compare the blade watts against an equivalent, what did I compare? I found a 100 watt. Fact, let me go onto a website and let's give you some accurate data rather than just talking rubbish. Accurate illumination blade 21 inch. Was it the 48 inch that's 100 watts? I think that's right. Let me have a look. 100 watts. Here we go. Right. So the AI blade 48 inch. Let me show you. The 48 inch. So the 4-foot one is 100 watts and it's 430 pounds. Okay. Probably these are the price doesn't matter if you're euros, dollars Australian, dollars US, dollars Canadian, whatever. The difference is important here. So 100 watts, 430 pounds. All right. And I'm saying that again so I remember. Whereas compare that with a premium light, by the way, an expensive light. All 2-packs. I don't want a 2-pack. Anyway, compare that with a premium expensive light. These are 105 watts, are they? No, 100 watts. 100 watts, exactly the same. 760 because it's a twin pack. I don't want the twin pack, do I? I want the single one. I think, why are these craziness? I'm pretty sure that they were 375 quid. Let me have a look. Where are they on XR15? I think they're 375. 400 quid. They've gone up. Bloody hell, that's expensive. Anyway, actually, so that's not so bad. But to be fair, Radeon is a more premium light than AI. And if you compare it to the AI Hydras, they're a lot more. So what they're kind of quite expensive. So in some ways, the AI blade, I think, looks quite expensive. But in other ways, for example, if you have one on there, it's pretty cheap. The one thing I would say about this, so although I've said that I would consider flanking my main light with a couple of AI blades, you don't need it. It needs more light. There's loads of things that show, like all the par checks that BRS did show that it gives really good spread and all that sort of stuff. You don't need it, particularly for an LPS tank. If you've got an SPS tank, having this massive wall of light is fantastic, and even on an LPS tank, that is good. But you don't need it. It's not necessary. It's in the want category, and I think they are cool. What else have we got going on in the chat? Let's catch up and see what you guys think, and tell me what you guys think. By the way, price point on the blades doesn't justify. Hang on, price point on the blades just doesn't justify the price point set on them. 400 quid for a 4-foot spew, 430 quid. So that's the thing. They are they are actually quite expensive. And what I really wanted to do, let's go back onto Charterhouse. And let's have a look at, let's compare it with, because it's not fair to compare it to, it's not fair to compare it to the Radeon. But what it is fair to compare it to is the AI Hydra 32. Here we go. God, that's expensive. 375 quid. Okay, so the AI Hydra 32 is 90 watts and it's 375 pounds. That's gone up. That's crazy. Is that right? But either way, what that shows is that they're pretty similar. And you're paying an extra 15% for the blade. And here we go. This is a better price, right? So this is H2O Aquatics, £337. So and so this is on sale, but these have been on sale for ages. I can't remember seeing them full price. So they're £100 less for this light than the strips. Now it's not really a fair comparison because they are different lights. But that's why I say in some respects, the blade is cheap. In other respects, by other measures, it's quite expensive. But I think it looks really slick as well. I think I'm not sure if I'd want just 3 blades going across my main tank as the only light. But I think one on a tank like that would look cool. And flanking a main light as well, I think would look quite slick. And although I do like the Reef Brights, they look a little bit agricultural. The old, what were they called? The Orfex as well. They look fine, but I really like the way they've made the blade look. I think it looks quality. Are there any good, and are they in the UK to buy? Oh, I've missed another comment, I suspect. Arowana, if you can tell me what you were talking about, I will answer your question better. The Glow needs to ditch the royal blue. No, Jim, don't ditch the royal blue. Make another model that has royals. Okay, for only yeah. Okay, I like the royal blue. I think what you're saying is have a third option, or instead of the Glow, just have 100% royal blue. I think if I had the Glow, the blue one, I would probably have mostly royal blue, and I think I'd turn the other lights down. In fact, I can tell you exactly what I do, because that light, oh, that's annoying. Bluetooth is disabled. Oh, that's annoying. So I think I've turned the lights down on that. I think it's mostly royal blue in the evening. So I would probably, if I got a blade, I probably wouldn't use as many of the other blue lights. But I think it's good to have that option. I do like the idea of 100% royal blue light, but I also think that a lot of people like to piss around with the sliders and add in little tweaks of other lights. So I don't know. What do you think about 3 Tunsy Marine Eco Chic 8811 lights for a flag section? They're wicked. I've had that exact setup. They're really good. Love them. Got a lot of time for them. They're quite expensive for the power, but you don't have to have them way above the tank, so the light touches the corals, the algae basically. So probably more efficient. Really good piece of kit. What else have we got? The Ocean Project. Oh no, you're talking about Ocean Project. Liar. Who's a liar? Who's lying? I need to find an affordable strip that has some shimmer. That's one thing with the blade. It looks like the blade has shimmer. The Reef Brights, I don't think they have shimmer. I think I've definitely had them just on. I'm pretty sure they don't have shimmer. The blade does have shimmer, and I had a close look, and I think it's little clusters, several little clusters, which, by the way, is what I wanted Kessel to do. What I want Kessel to do is bring out a panel light. So it's, I don't know, 12 inches square or 10 inches square or something. And instead of just one big cluster, have 4 small clusters. So the spread is better, or even have a strip light. So it's several clusters, and then you get the shimmer as well. But yes, the AI blade does have shimmer. So that might be what you're after. And this, so that's quite muted shimmer. That's quite nice shimmer. So it looks similar to that. So if that is doing your head in right now, it's too shimmery. But if you think that looks nice, and I do for what it's worth, then maybe that's right. But if you, if some LED lights give you migraines, you do not want a Kessel. Kessel Dork though does. Alex, I don't want to change my lights. No need to lie. I know. Am I trying to convince myself, or am I trying to convince everyone else? Entirely possible. Reef Brights 450 and 470. Interesting. Yeah, so that makes sense, because that it's not the proper deep blue. But this is the thing, I was slightly surprised by the Reef Brights. It does look really nice. I do like them, but everybody says they're the king of fluorescence, and I got them and I was like, they are really good. But actually, my Evergrows, and they're totally different lights, so it's apples and oranges. But my Evergrows, the Reef Breeders, the fluorescence on that, oh man, was better than the fluorescence on the Reef Brights. And that makes sense as why, because they're partially diluted. It's not happening, James. It's not happening, James. It's not happening, James. It's not happening. It's not happening. I just don't need to change it. My tank will be better if I don't change my lights. Oh God, why is this? It's not like I change my lights all the time, and I'm bringing this on myself. Anyone who takes that bet is losing. God, I get so much stick for lights. But this is why. So this is the thing. If I behave myself and don't change my lights for like 5 years, maybe people will forget and stop taking the mick at me. Light change on the main tank is inevitable. Oh no, it's not. I don't want to do it. One tank, halide. Yeah, but halides are so hot and they're ugly. And with the what's it called? With the electricity situation as it is, I would not fancy halides. Though I would like to have one. Royal Blue 420. That's not Royal Blue. Not to my eye, anyway, not to my understanding. That's a lighter blue, I think. Or maybe slightly more purpley kind of blue. I don't know. Old school Arcadia actinic. I didn't ever have old school Arcadia actinic. Is that a halide bulb? Sure, might be. 470 Ali bars. Yeah, I don't like 470. 450 is the sweet spot for me. What for what is a true is not true. I know it's a clunky comparison. It's like comparing horsepower for horsepower. It's not quite the same. But yet nonetheless, you get what I mean. That's why I think it's a fair enough rough comparison for price point purposes. We've talked, oh god. Like 90% of the comments are taking a piss at me for changing my lights. This is why I need to stop changing lights. What else have we got? Getting the glow next. Yeah. And actually, in terms of if there was a combination, so if you were getting 3, I think I would go 1 white and 2 blue. So 1 grow and 2 glows, personally. Although if you only get 1, the white one, the grow, can do blue. It's just, you get so many LEDs. There's a lot of good value lights out there for not much money, chief among which are Reef Breeders. They are, pound for pound, they are the best lights I've had. So in terms of performance, look, shimmer was even nice. Surprisingly, shimmer was nice on the Reef Breeders. Not Reef Breeders, Evergrey, same thing though. They are, for my money, the best light. And actually, I realized after I bought the AI for this, that the small Reef Breeder light would have been perfect for that. The only thing is that we do have to have them quite high up, because they're proper laser beams. So you have to mount them quite high up, but they're wicked. Reef Talk, please do a poll. How many people use blue versus full spectrum? I will do a poll, although if I'm going to do so, I need to change that channel. Good question, Paul. I reckon this will be pretty unanimous in favor of full spectrum. Start a poll. What's the question? I think we're asking, do you run your tanks? Here we go. Do you run your lights blue 100% of the time? Yes. No. Right, ask your community. Go. I don't on any of my tanks. That is currently getting a little bit blue because it's in the evening. And I always have blue in the evening, blue in the morning, but white for, I don't know, 7 hours, 6 hours, maybe 6 or 7 hours, with a bit of blue either side. And I think that's the best way because then you get the best of both worlds. Because your fish look stupid under blue lights, don't they? And fish are cool. Guys, I have a Hollywood Chalice, Gorilla Balls, Zoas. Who's making these names up, for God's sake? Jason Fox, Anna Kapora, Ultra Purple Mushrooms. You might be talking to someone else. Are the blades expensive for a 4-foot tank if you need 2 XR15s? Are you saying instead of 2 XR15s? Ah, yes, you are. So what would I get then? Let me have a look. Okay, so let's go back and see price for price. This is a good comparison. Lighting. Aquatics, lighting, aqua illumination. So if I had a 4-foot tank, I think I would get 2 4-foot. 2 4-foot. Yeah, that's a fair comparison, and that's a similar what I would get 2 4-foot AI blades, and I think I'd probably get one of each, but I don't really like that. If you just had 2, then they're similar price. They're a little bit more expensive, so they're 10% more expensive basically. And I also wonder if the other thing with I think that if you just have, unless it was a tank like that where you have one down the middle, if you just had a couple of blades over the top, I wonder if it might look a bit silly. It might not look that great, although they are quite slick. And the other thing is because they cover so much space, if you've just got 2 XR15s, it's much easier to see top down and get your hands in for when you need to put corals in and all that sort of stuff. So that would be a restriction. So I think of those 2 options, I think I'd go XR15s, but I think you could probably make an argument that 2 blades would be better for the corals because there's more spread. But I think I'd probably go 2 XR15s. The other thing with the XR15s, I was about to say, with the blade, sorry. I was about to say that you'd have to think about mounting options. And that's one thing. It's a brand new product, so, you know, give them a bit of time to come up with some mounting options. But at the moment, the mounting options are a bit lacking. Let's have a look. So there's this little funny clip that clips onto it and then mounts either side of your Radion or whatever, and it looks a bit clunky. I think they need more mounting options. There are a few, to be fair, but I think, and it's got the little 8mm screw thread at the end, so you can DIY your own one. But with a slick light like the AI blade that looks nice, do you really want to be putting together some clunky rubbish thing using parts off from B&Q? I don't know. So I'd like to see more mounting options for them, especially on the longer ones, because on the Reef Dudes video, they look like they were sagging in the middle because they're not really designed to the 4-foot ones with the tank mounts. They sag in the middle, and that's not you're not supposed to run them that way. So I'd like to see more options. Let's have a look at the poll. How's that going? Do you run your lights blue 100% of the time? 30% yes. I'm surprised that's quite high. But corals do look cool under blue. So interesting. It wouldn't be a fair poll. Anyone that votes full spectrum shouldn't be allowed to vote. Why? James, what you got against full spectrum? Oh, Andy, you are opinionated. All LEDs are a con. Go buy a used T5 light for 50 quid, job done. Yeah, corals will grow great, but they'll look rubbish. And you won't be able to get bulbs in a few years' time, probably. But yeah, it's true. It's undeniably true that a T5, 50 quid T5 light will do just fine. And if you're on a budget and you can't afford a 500 quid Radion, get a 50 quid T5 light and you can't go wrong. Although your electricity bill will be a little bit higher. Probably not that much higher, to be fair. What else have we got going on? Oh, we've got Sam who wants some help with a goby. I've just remembered member questions. Struggling with feeding coral goby. Coral goby, the little yellow guy. Any tips? Tried seaweed extreme, different pellets, nori, but he swims off scared. If he's brand new, fish take a bit of time to adapt, but he won't eat things like seaweed and nori. They'll eat try pellet food, frozen food. I would try frozen mysis or frozen brine shrimp maybe, but preferably frozen mysis. That's what they'll eat. I had one a long time ago and it always ate fine, but it did nibble at the base of my SPS polyps, which is very annoying. Cyan is the worst color on the planet. Duck egg. I see your cyan and I raise you duck egg, Sean. It's not a color. It's a goddamn, I don't know, shell. What else have we got going on? Reef Talk. Are the reefers obsessed with lighting? Only SPS keepers? Exactly. So this is the thing. Having loads of LED strips covering a full tank with just LPS and softy is great, and it is better. It covers more of the tank in light as much as anything. But it's not necessary. Absolutely not necessary. SPS 100%. You want a massive blanket, but it's not so important. It's not necessary. Not so important, I think, with LPS. But I still do like the idea. On my 2-foot square tank to my left, just got one. It's a Reflare. It's equivalent of an XR15. It's a Reflare S, and it does a fine job. Absolutely fine. And even when that's fully grown out, I think it would still be fine, because polyps move around, don't they, with LPS, whereas they don't, or not so much with SPS. But there you go. But it still would be better. It would be better to have a full spread of light and have a more even spread and have light all over the tank, coming from all sorts of angles, even with LPS. But it's not necessary. You don't need it. So it's again want versus need. Mrs. Reef Talk owns a house. Reef Talk owns £500,000 of lights. Yeah, sounds about right. And she pays half the electricity bill. So, jokes on her. Reef lights meet more pigments being a bit whiter, but true actinic 03 is what you want. I'll take your word for it. Let's catch up a little bit. And we've got 72% say they want full spectrum. And actually, loads of people saying full spectrum. Full spectrum, 80%. That for me is it. 70-80%, that kind of level, with blues in the evening, because blues, I wouldn't be without blues. It just looks so cool. But yeah, for sure, you've got to have some white lights, and I've got loads of fish that look awesome under white lights and probably would not look so good. Well, they do not look so good. Anyway, let me catch up with the chat, and then we'll move on to. Right, there we go. I've caught up with the chat. Were there other things that I wanted to talk about with the AI blade, apart from it looked wicked? More mounting options. Shame there's no single full spectrum. Prefer not to have to mix and match, because that's the thing. If you wanted to buy two, do you just get one of each, and then is it going to look a little bit uneven? I don't know. I would like a full spectrum option, although I probably wouldn't buy it myself. Yeah, there we go. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about with the blade. So there were a couple of member questions though that were well worth looking at. So let me go and find the community tab. Here we go. Right. So Shamilla Butters, my apologies, 1536 asks, do you think a mixture of Radeon Gen 3s and the blades would cause less shadowing and lead to more growth? Less shadowing, yes, absolutely, because if you've got a light coming from this angle, then you're going to get more shadowing than if you've got lights coming from all angles. So absolutely, yes, you'd get less shadowing. Would it lead to more coral growth? Probably, but significantly, no. If you were to spend 400 quid, are you getting 400 quid's worth of extra growth? Probably not. Would you notice it? Whenever I've added more light to my tank, I've noticed that the alkalinity consumption goes up. So as in, my tank uses more alkalinity and calcium. So therefore, more light does generally mean more growth. There's limits to it. If you've got 400 par, you're not going to grow your corals faster. If you go at 800 par, you'll just kill them. But you probably would get a little bit more growth. But I don't think that would be a good enough reason to buy them. The way it would make the tank look, and it would illuminate all of your corals, that for me is a reason. And that was one of the reasons I bought the what they call the reef breeders, because I wanted the full illumination of all of my corals. Because as much as anything, the way they look, regardless of how much better it is for the coral, the way it makes the tank look, is wicked. So yeah, I think that would be a good mix. But if you're just doing it for growth, I would focus on other things, like getting your water consistent. Kalkwasser than buying lights, because lights generally aren't the solution to growth problems. And the other question was from Gameplays and Tutorials. You changed your name. I feel like your name was different before. I've recognized your avatar. Have you ever thought about having an aquarium upstairs? Do you have any recommendations when it comes to wanting to do this? So I have 2 aquariums upstairs. That one, in fact, 3. I got the Lego one as well. So I've got that one, sorry, and then a water box of 55. It says they call it 55 gallon, but it's actually 40 gallon US gallons, 150 liters. I measured the water. So I have 2 tanks upstairs, but they're not heavy. And I think what you're getting at with that is heavy tanks, because that's more of an issue. Having a little 50-liter tank, in fact, that's probably, I think that was about 38, 42 liters, something like that, after displacement. So that's what, 50 kilos, call it, with all the rock. It's not really an issue. That's not going to go through any floors like Del Boy. The other one as well, 150, let's call that 200 kilos, 400 pounds ish, that sort of level, 440 pounds. Not going to be a problem. If you were going with a massive tank, I'd want to consult a builder or someone to pull up my floor and say that beam will take it, that beam won't take it. But it would have to be pretty big for me to worry about that, to be fair. But there we go. So those were the member questions. Let's catch up with the chat as well. What's your opinion of Orphec lights? So I had an OR3 bar, the blue plus. I think there's a blue sky now, which I think is 450 nanometers. I liked it. The spread isn't very wide at all. It's a laser beam. So you have to have it. Mine was something like 13 inches, 12 inches off the water surface. I like that because it makes it much easier to access your tank anyway. But you have to have it quite high off the water surface. But it looked nice. It made the tank look better. When that light went off for the last 2 hours of the day, the tank looked worse. So I liked the Orphec bar. The Atlantic Icon, I don't like. It's not my cup of tea. And again, it means you have these enormous panels above the tank. They're not my cup of tea, but they are very good lights from what I've seen. And I've seen some absolutely banging tanks that grow corals extraordinarily fast. Not just to do with the lights, of course, but yeah, they're very good light. They're just not my cup of tea. I don't like them. I wouldn't have one. If Orphec sent me one for free, I would send it back. But in fact, I'd just tell them I don't want it in the first place. So that's my thoughts on them. Oh, you're talking to someone else, I think. 10% white. Well, I'm going to finish the poll there, and we finished with 111 votes. That's good going. A lot of votes there. And the results were 73% do not. Right, hang on. Do you run your lights blue 100% of the time? 26%. So 1 in 4 people have only blues, which I think is interesting. Actually, I wonder if that's mostly nano tanks. Because I think that's probably more common with smaller tanks than it is with bigger tanks. But there we go. Hi, Neil Davis says, just upgrading to a bigger tank, 4 or 5 foot. What lights would you recommend to cover all coral types? 4 foot, probably I'd start with some. It's such an arbitrary decision on my part, because any of the lights will do the job. Basically, you don't need to. The light you choose doesn't matter. It's not going to be the determining factor of whether or not you're successful. Yet it's something that we all obsess over, myself included, as we well know. I would go for, if it was a 4 foot tank, I would go for something like 2 Radion XR15s, and then that will be perfectly acceptable for the first year or so whilst you're adding corals and all that sort of stuff. And it's only really if you want to cover it in SPS that you'd need more then, and maybe you could just add a couple of bars like reef bright strips or 2 AI blades, for example. So that's what I would go for. And if it's a 5 foot, I'd probably add 1 more, because if you have the spread is great, but if you have a 5 foot with 2 of those tanks, you'll get dark patches at either side. But I wouldn't sweat it too much. I'd go with what lights you like the look of when you see them in shops. Don't go too crazy. Radions won't guarantee you success. If you buy a Castle instead, it won't make your tank better. If you buy an AI Hydra, it'll save you a few quid, probably do just as good a job. I think it's minimal differences. So you can choose any of them choose the one that you like the look of, basically, is what I'm saying. I don't think it's as important a decision as people understandably think it is. And understandably, because people like me spend hours talking about it. 2 grows with a glow in the middle would be a good option. Yeah, true. And actually, you can have the grows to the glow spectrum anyway, so, or more or less, or the 450 nanometer anyway. I would wait until they're proven SPS growers before. I wouldn't have any issues with them being SPS growers, but any new product is bound to have some kind of teething issues. And actually, Jim Graham Telegram showed a couple of issues with the wiring. It's not bad, it's not a problem. It just looked a bit shoddy, and then a couple of the bit, there were just a few niggling little build quality issues that they will probably iron out in time, or it might just be in a one-off, to be fair. But any new product, there's bound to be some issues with it. Overheating power bricks is common with new LEDs. I think the Radeon Gen 5 had a problem with that. I think the Red Sea Reef LED had a problem with that. I only ever ran mine at 50%, so I don't know, but I saw lots of people complaining about that. So yeah, it's never a bad idea to wait to see how other people get on with new equipment, despite the fact that some stuff looks cool and shiny and you're like, oh, I want it. What else we got going on? Oh yeah, lots of chat about load bearing stuff, so that's cool. The blue sky is reef bright spectrum 450 470. Okay, that's slightly, I'm glad I didn't get them in the end, because I was looking at them because I was hoping they might be 450. I think I looked into that, I can't remember. Anyway, there we go. So that's potentially a good thing, but the Orphex, there's nothing wrong with them, the blue sky Orphex, but they are a laser beam. So if that's what you want, that's great. But if you want a more even, smoother spread, the reef brights are better. Have you ever been hands-on with a reef flare blast? Yes, I have. I was sent one early doors, and I just didn't. It wasn't my cup of tea. And also, mainly because it's like the Orphex bar, but it's not the same. I compared. I had an Orphex bar at the same time. I looked at them side by side. They look very similar, but the casing is actually different. So it wasn't my cup of tea, but mainly because I had it on a tank in here, and I've got a sloping roof, so I had to have it at like 6 inches off the water surface, and it was a mass proper laser beam, whereas if you have it twice as high, it's much better. So I didn't get on with it for that reason, but because I didn't have the right setup for it, so I didn't properly play with it. I turned it on, had it on for a couple of days, and then I didn't carry on with it. So buy some of Alex's old lights. Yeah. Exactly. You'd think I've got like a stash of old lights, but I sell them as a go. Reef Talk, David Krasevsky. I have a 100-litre tank at first. My Zoas were fully open, and 2 weeks now, third day of them being closed. What am I doing wrong? Zoas can be a little bit like that, but if it's a new tank, new tanks are not. Lots of people say that that put a soft coil in your tank for day one. And I don't disagree with that. I did that on this one. That you can see there. Where is it? There. That's a GSP. I wouldn't say don't do it, but don't expect them to be 100% fine all the time. So if it's a new tank, you might be having problems with that. But it'll be something to do with your water quality. So do a full suite of water tests, starting with salinity, ending with nitrate, phosphate, calcium, alkalinity, magnesium. Those three are less important for Zoas, but there might be something bothering them if you didn't dip them when you bought them. There might be a pest on them, but it's probably a water quality thing. Might be getting too much flow if they're getting blasted. Might be too much light. It's really hard to say, but it'll almost certainly be a water quality issue. Fit and finish on the blades. The next batch will have better. I know of other blades that have the wiring issue. Okay, so there you go. So maybe that's the thing. When it's a bit of a shame, though, really, that I was going to say maybe that's the thing that they just iron out in the next round, which is what Jim's saying. But it's not a cheap light, and it's a bit of a shame that they have those quality issues. And I would like to think that it would be important enough for them to say, let's make sure we get this right before we release them. I don't suppose it really matters, and I think it's not going to harm the light, but it just feels a little bit like, well, not shoddy. Is shoddy unfair? Maybe not. Any thoughts on ITC par-wise? Oh, ITC par-wise. I think you're saying IT. I don't know what you're saying. ITC. I don't know what you mean. Oh, ITC Reef Culture par-wise. Oh yes, this is the Senai Spectra. I think. That's what it looks like anyway. And I think ITC are owned by Senai or vice versa. I've got no idea. I use the Senai Reef, and it's fine. It's 220 quid. It's not a bad price, to be fair, actually. I don't know. Never used it. I suspect it's probably all right, but I have a Senai Reef, and I don't care really. I don't want to know if I've got 174 par or 171 par. I basically want to know, is it 150 or is it 200? And even that, if it's around there, that's okay. So I'm not too bothered if they're not accurate. There've been a couple of times when I tested, there was an issue with the software on the Senai Reef, and it was reading double. So it was telling me I had 700 par on the sand bed, which is crazy. But generally, there's nothing wrong with the Senai Reef. I don't know about this Senai par-wise. Let me share the screen so you can see it. I haven't even heard of it. That looks like the Senai Spectra to me. So maybe it's rebadged, I don't know. Although I thought the Spectra was like 4 times the price. So maybe it's a cheap version. But this is because this looks like a new product, although that casing is identical to the the Senai Reef. It's just got a different light reading bit. The Senai Reef is tried and trusted. It's been around for years. BRS have done tests on it against expensive par meters that show it's pretty good. I would stick with the Senai Reef, to be honest. And I think the Senai Reef is a good second-hand purchase because there are loads on eBay. So if you just do a search, save a search for Senai Reef, one will come up and you'll get one cheap because they are a little bit expensive. Brand new. They're not too expensive, but they're a little bit expensive. But I would go with the Senai Reef person. The blades look amazing in person. Oh, Brucey boy. Yeah, you saw them this week, I think. I was talking to someone in your shop today, Reef Keeper Moss End. Who was it? I can't remember. But I was talking to someone who said that they do look good, but love some more par tests, etc. Yeah, I like the sound of the thing is they are what I wanted when I got the Reef Breeders. But anyway, don't change your life. Don't change your life. Don't change your lives. Yeah, like the video, guys. Support Alex. He needs new lights. He doesn't need new lights. Don't need new lights. Just one will keep Dork in new lights for a month. Exactly. Yeah. God, I don't know myself, do I? For just one, hang on. For just one like per video, Reef Dork can feed his addiction to par. Change your lights. Again, I'm not going to change my lights. Stop it. Hang on. That's come up for no reason. Right. That was pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. How long are we in? 1 hour and 22. So this is the thing. If I got Prestige Reef here, we can talk about a load of nonsense and just take the mick out of each other. But I don't. One thing I've realized, actually, every time I watch back the Prestige Reef live streams, he always says stuff. And when I'm reading the comments and I'm like, yeah. And then I watch it back and he's taking the piss at me or whatever, and I miss it. So I will try to concentrate, try to do better next time. All right. Well, I think we have caught up with the chat. Oh, do you know what? There's one question I'm waiting for it to pop up. Gabe Graham. If you've got any other questions, by the way, chuck them in the chat and I'll answer them. But otherwise, I'll wrap up shortly because I've covered everything I wanted to cover. How do you go about acclimating corals to new lights? This is when you have a so obviously I changed my lights a few times. I've done it a few times. It's really good idea to do a par test before and after, of course, because then you get a baseline of where you're at. And then when you put your new lights on, you can test and get an idea of where they are. And as long as they're roughly the same, within 10% or so, the par values, that for me is okay. But the better way to do it, and what I tend to do, is I turn the new lights down. And I don't think so. When I changed most recently, I didn't do a par test. I couldn't be asked because it took ages for me to change over my lights. So instead, I ran the lights at 50% when my previous lights were at like 80-90%, and I raised them up a few inches higher. So there was, and when you work out roughly in terms of watts isn't equal to horsepower, you know, it's a clunky measurement. But when you work out roughly, you can work out that you're not going to be going too much. So it's far better to put too little on and then turn them up slowly. So that's the way I would do it. But if you can just do a par test before and after, spot on, that's the way to do it. But if not, raise the new lights up higher, turn them down lower, and then bump them up slowly, even over the course of a couple of months. Probably doesn't have to be that long, but there you go. Two things. First off,
James, thank you for the super chat. Thanks for putting him onto Calculator. It's been life-changing. Yes. And this is it. You can spend all the money you want on new lights. Am I talking to myself now? You can spend all the money you want on new lights. It won't have as much of an impact as Calculator until you start spending pound for pound. It's an absolute bargain until you spend 400 quid on a Calculator. Reef Dog, where did you get your yellow Monty from with the blue polyps? Frag Farm ages ago. It was free. But he gave it to me a tiny bit like that. And it's hardly grown. That was 4 years ago, I bet. But I have a few frags. But every time I say I have a few frags I'm going to sell, I get a load of messages on Instagram saying, let me know when you're selling them. I'm probably not going to post them. So you would need to be close to me. But look, sign up to Ultimate Reef and you will see them on there at some point. We've got more questions coming. Is there any good in-tank lights for starting a cheap frag tank, having height space issues? That's a really good point, actually, Max. So the AI blade is water. I think, is it splash proof? It's IP67, IP68. I checked earlier. Where is it? I bought an Eheim Powerhead, and that is IP68. So IP67 is one step short of that. You can't put the blades in your tank, but they are splash proof. So if you've got that issue, you could put one of those just above your frag tank. The other best option is the Tunzi 8850 full spectrum. But that's a really good, I mean, in a way that for a niche purpose, the Tunzi 8850 is a wicked light, but they're very expensive, very, very expensive indeed. And they don't have an awful lot of power. So comparing the Tunzi 8850, which is very niche, to the blade is much, much better value for money. So actually, those are the two options that spring to mind, and the blade wins hands down. And they've brought out this Refugium light, haven't they? The Blade Refugium. And it is, it's a Refugium light. And that looks like a good option as well, because that can sit nice and close to the water line. So it's not, because the problem with having a Refugium light for most of the time in your sump is that it gets in your way. So you can't put your hands in without bashing it. You can't put your head in the sump without bashing it. And also, I'm always worried about it rusting in the humid environment of the air. So that's why I recommend the Tunzi 8831s. But the AI blade is another option. I would be a little bit cautious about putting an AI blade on hanging over above the tank, because if it came loose or you bashed it or whatever, it would go in the tank. That would worry me. Whereas with the Tunzi, you can submerge it. It doesn't matter. It's fine. So I hope that answers your question. Someone asked, Abbas, that was it. Abbas, you said who's on next week? Probably, I'm hoping Prestige Reef will be back, because I got some stuff I want to do with him. That sounds dodgy. Got some topics I want to discuss with him that I think will be really good. I've got this Friday's video is not going to be a proper video, but it's going to be kind of, I'll tell you something, and I think it's really good news, and I think it will give me more time to think of really good things which will improve the live stream. But I'll tell you on Friday. But yeah, it's probably going to be Ryan if he's around, if he's free. Acro Man should be on with his dog. Do you mean? Calc is king. Reef's Elements. This is a good idea. I'll talk about Reef's Elements as well. How long does a Zelements ICP test to get results? Be nearly a week. I mean, it's January, so it's probably a nightmare for post and catching up with backlogs. But I've never used Reef's Elements before, but they normally turn it around within a week. But ping him a message. Jose is the guy who runs it. Really nice guy, really helpful. He will sort you out like a bean sprout. Reef's Elements. So last week on the ABC reagents one, I mentioned the price of Triton manganese, which is what I use at the moment. It's bloody expensive. This was 20 quid, this cost me for 100 milliliters, and that lasts me 50 days. And I found out today that Reef's Elements manganese comes in a bottle. This is 100 milliliters. The Reef's Element stuff comes in 150 milliliters. I think it's the same concentration, although I don't know. It might not be. And is £5 cheaper. Even cheaper than that is the Fauna Marin stuff, which is 250 milliliters for about the same price as the Triton. So it's got me thinking about changing, because the Jonas was talking about the price of this stuff, because if you buy a litre of this, it's £110 in the UK. And he was like, what? That's crazy. And it does feel like a rip-off. So love calc. Calc. Oh, that light. If you're talking about the Tunzi, it's a really niche light. I think so. I had two in an in-sump frag tank a while ago, and it cost me, by the time I bought the control box as well, it cost me 400 quid for like 40 watts of light, and it has a ton of white lights that look awful that you want to turn off and just have the blue light. So it's niche as hell. Dev is in the house. Reef dudes, what's going on, my man? Oh, Reef dudes, you have experience with the blade. How are you getting on with them? I think you're probably loving them. And in fact, it turns out I'm way behind on the chat, so you might have already answered that question, but I would be interested to know. I saw your video and it sounds like they're wicked. They looked very impressive in terms of the spread and the amount of light over when you just put one on the main tank, the Peninsula tank. That was cool. Calc is king. It is king. My bad on the start, on its way. Wicked. I might be able to set up this week anyway. I wouldn't have been upset this week anyway, but cheers, Sean. Much appreciated. I can't wait to get that. King, yeah. 449, and they say money can't buy a smile. Exactly. That's how much a smile costs. What can't you find? What can't you find? What can't you find? I can't remember what I was talking to you about. Maybe it's a Tunzi 850. Maybe they've stopped selling it. IP66. Okay, so they were too short of submersible, but that's enough. It's all it needs to be. You're not going to put it in water. And hang on a second. Sean is going crazy. Look at that. Just trying this out. Thank you very much, Sean. Yeah. If everybody else can try, 189 people watching. What's 189 times 899? If we can all try that out, that would be great, because obviously I need to feed my PAR addiction. What dosing pumps do you run? I currently run all refractory dosing pumps, but they're the single. I bought them ages ago when they were first out, and they didn't have the 4. I think they've got 3 as a group and 4 now, and I bought 7 or 8, I think, and they were 110 quid each. I've never done a review of them because I bought them as I wasn't obliged to do so. But they're good. I like them. They're fine. They've been running for quite a long time, but they're not necessarily, the app's very good because it's just brilliant, but they're not necessarily better than others, but they merge well with the app. What would I recommend? Ooh, the GHL one is very, very good, very quiet as well. But that's probably all much of a muchness. I like the refractory one, so I probably recommend them. But loads of them are. There are loads of good dosing pumps out there. To be fair, one of the blades could fit under the hood of a dual tank. Reckon they probably could, because I was thinking of the same question for being under the hood of this tank, because the normal hood as standard goes up to about there. Ooh, there. And bearing in mind you've got an inch of water line, I think they probably could. But there you go. I'd still rather have them quite high, although the BRS PAR test, spread test, showed that they perform quite well, quite low down. And that's kind of what they're designed for, which is wicked. Just done a vid on the Blade Fuge. It's in my sump under my lid and works very well. I will look forward to seeing that. We got whale shark bants. I found out my whale shark nips at my SBS. I don't believe you. I don't even think you've got a whale shark, Jason. I think you're lying, because I don't think a whale shark would eat SBS polyps. So there you go. I'm calling you out. You're talking to each other, which is funky. I've not run the Apex Fuge light. I had an AI Fuge prior swapped. Yeah, that AI Fuge looked good, to be fair. But I always thought it was too much light. That's why I liked the 8831, the Tunzi, because not a lot, and you can always add more if you want to. Whereas you buy an AI Fusion running at 20-30%, feels like a waste. But I think I probably would have ended up running it at 100%. So maybe. What else have we got? Does anyone know what are the best wave makers? Best wave makers. I don't think there is a best wave maker, to be honest. I don't think there's a massive amount of difference in terms of health of your corals. They all do slightly different jobs in that some of them are quite direct flow. BRS have done loads of videos on this. Some of them are direct, some of them are quite wide. The ones that I would say are the best, if you want a simple best explanation, is the MP40s, because they're very powerful, and they know wise in the tank, of course. The apps all right. And you can swap out the wet sides very easily. So they are probably the best in my opinion, but there are loads of others that are perfectly good. And I run on this one, I run a Jekod SLW10, which is fine, perfectly good. Although actually I have just replaced it, but I'm about to replace it. But Jekod are really good as well. And if a Jekod pump is half the price of a Vortec MP40, you're not getting twice the benefit with an MP40. But I would still say they're worth it if you can stretch. So, how do you feel about the Pilot Pro frag tanks? I don't like them. I think they look awesome, but I wouldn't have one. Is probably the best way to put it. It's acrylic, but I think they look extraordinarily smart. And let's have a look. So let me share so everybody knows what this is. So this is a UK company, and this is, I think there's a newer version of this, but basically that's the idea. A little frag tank sits on your desk, nice and neat, and it comes with all this equipment. Or I think you can get it just on its own. But I think it looks wicked. You don't need power heads because you've got all these RFGs and all those little frag plug holders. So I think it looks really good. But it's acrylic. I just don't want an acrylic tank ever. In a way, that's great because it would be crystal clear on the glass on the acrylic. But I don't know. For me, it's just, it looks wicked. I just don't want it because it's acrylic. That's all there is to it, and it would scratch. Let me see if I can show you another tank. I'm sure they had a newer version. Oh my word! They got millions. Look at this. Ah, there's some really really nice options actually. There's one on a stand, which is quite cool. Oh, with a sump. That's awesome. There's a drop off. I do like the drop off. They look cool. Do you know what? Good question, Archie's. I'll take it all back. I still wouldn't have one because of acrylic, but I like the drop off little peninsula versions. Yeah, God, they got some cool options. And they're a little bit expensive, but I think they're kind of fairly priced because they're quite nice. So yeah, the only thing that puts me off is their acrylic. And I think that I'd say they're acrylic. They might not all be acrylic, but the first one that they brought out was acrylic. So who knows? But they look nice, actually. There's some nice options there. What? Swell got a litre of Triton manganese for 20 quid. No, don't believe it. That'll be 100 millilitres. That's exactly what the 100 milliliter costs. I don't believe that. What else have we got? Reeves Elements is the king. I've never used Reeves Elements, but I mean, manganese is manganese, right? I don't know. We'll see. Chris Allen recommends it. You can just make your own. Yeah, I just want. This is what's his face from ABC Reagents was talking about. Cost pennies. I just wouldn't know how to do it. I wouldn't know what intensity to make it. I wouldn't have a clue. Maybe I should look it up. But then even then, even if I was able to do it, would I want to experiment on my own tank to save a few quid when I've spent a crazy amount of money? Probably not. But I do like the idea of DIY manganese, especially when it's extraordinarily expensive in the shop. $8.99 is for the gun show. Yeah, I'll tell Ryan next week. Is there an up-to-date list of all coral web shops in the UK? I don't know if there's a list. PrestigeReef.co.uk is obviously the main one. I like taking the mick out of Ryan and saying it's the best in the world because I know it winds him up. What else is there? There's I've gone blank. Signature Frags is another big one. There's a few others, but I don't know if there's a list. Well, actually, Ocean Project sell online as well. I don't know if there's a list, but I did do a video a while ago, a live stream where it was something like how to buy corals or something like that. And within the first 15 minutes, I listed all of the shops that I was aware of that sell online. So go back and check out the first 15 minutes of that video, and I think there are tags in the description, so you should be able to click on the time. You're talking to someone else. What else have we got going on? Let's see if we've got to the end of the chat. We might have got to the end of the chat. Hello from Australia, Bonza. What are your thoughts on anemones? They look cool as hell, but I've never had one. I've had rock flower anemones, but they don't really count. I've never had one because I don't like the idea of them walking all over the place and stinging stuff, because they can sting stuff and they're finicky. So if you have one in the first 6 months, it's probably not going to live. It might be a little bit unkind on there, but Have you used my soup method on that Evo tank? I started, Sean, because I bought all the stuff and I started with it, but I didn't like it because it took ages to mix up and it was a faff. And I was just like, I had to do it. I couldn't face the prospect of doing that every week because I'm too lazy and I've got 3 tanks to look after and a YouTube channel and a missus and a job and a cat. So no, but I liked it when I poured it in. Actually, do you know what? I poured it in the main tank and I liked that. Actually, it you know, when people say, oh, the corals loved it, and you're like, well, what does that mean? But I do feel like the corals loved it. So yeah, but it was quite expensive and too much faff. I don't like faff. I like Red Sea Reef Energy where you can just go pour a bit in and it's put it back in the fridge. What else have we got going on? 2-second swap, yeah, for the what are they called, wet sides. I've not cleaned mine for ages, but it makes such a difference when you clean them. But yeah, that's one of the best things about what are they called? MP40s. What? I've got to shoot. Watch out for sex bots. Okay, cheers, Les. Thanks for coming along. I will watch out for sex bots. Right, let's catch up. Let's go scroll to the end. Let's see if we've got anything else going on. I think we're more or less there. Reef Talk, check your Instagram. Sent you a photo of their website. Whose website? Sedders, the Sedmeister. Can't see who you sent me but yeah, I'll check at some point. Hang on a second. Okay, I'm sending you a message on Instagram. Don't bother. Save your time. I just never reply to Instagram messages because I get loads, and I'm not really an Instagrammer. I have an account because I like it for photos and that sort of stuff, and for sharing when I'm uploading on the channel. But I'm not really an Instagrammer. I'm a YouTuber. So if anybody ever wants me to comment on something or me to reply, 99% more chance of me doing so in the YouTube on YouTube videos than if you send me a message on Instagram. I don't go around to it. It's just I don't have time. I have to draw the line somewhere, and it's always Instagram that loses out. Anyway, I'm just so excited coming back to reefing after a very amateur attempt. Cool. Good to hear. I think we've caught up with the end of the chat, and we are 1 hour and 42, which is pretty good going, actually. So thank you all for joining. Next week, we might have Prestige Reef back, the Prestige Reef Talk Show. We'll see. Thank you all for joining. Thanks for coming along, and I'll catch you all next week. Bye, guys.